Welcome to Peninsula Symphony All-Stars at Home. We have two All-Stars who are at home in various different varieties of home at the moment. Two recent winners, the two most recent winners of the Irving M. Klein International String Competition in San Francisco. So welcome Gabrielle Després and welcome James Baik.
Hello.
Hi.
It's so nice to see you both. I saw a lot of James 2 years ago. This can be 2 years ago. Yes, almost 2 years ago now, in a regular live installation of the Irving Klein String Competition. And I've seen Gabrielle on screens a great deal. Last year's competition, just a little less than a year ago, was virtual for the Klein competition. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Tell me briefly, each of you, where you are now. Gabrielle.
Right now, I'm in my apartment in New York City. Yeah, I've been here since October because there's been some in-person school going on. So yeah.
And Gabrielle is at Juilliard. Are you finishing up your last year at Juilliard?
I'm finishing my third year right now.
Third year. Yeah. So you're starting to think about what happens after Juilliard.
Yeah, just starting to think about it.
Right. And James, tell us where you are.
I'm in Houston, Texas with my family, our home. So
yeah, so you grew up in Houston, or at least mostly in Houston, right?
Yeah, my whole life has been in Houston.
Yeah. And of course, there's a terrific musical community at Houston. There's Rice and there's Houston Symphony and opera and fabulous opera company and so forth. Gabrielle, you grew up, you started life in Calgary, is that right?
Edmonton.
Edmonton, sorry, right.
No, it's pretty close.
There's a lot of music in Alberta.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Yeah, it's really been a powerful musical generator of violinists in particular.
Yeah, a lot of violinists have come from, Edmonton and Calgary.
Right.
Yeah, something in the air.
Yeah, both. And both have terrific music schools. I'm very familiar with Bill Vandersloot from Calgary, who has had violinists at the competition before. And so and of course, Canada supports its musicians in a way that the United States unfortunately does not. And that's a great thing. Oh, we'll talk about all of this more. But let's start off with James. And we want our audience to get a chance to hear each of you play. We're going to hear music of Schubert, Brahms, Ysaÿe, and Casado today, and some fabulous performances by these two wonderful string players. So we're going to start off with the Schubert Arpeggione Sonata, performed by James and Charlie Tauber. When was this recorded, James?
This was probably recorded towards the end of 2020. So it's been a couple months.
And our audience is going to find this performance just enchanting. The Arpeggione Sonata can be played as a kind of virtuoso piece. And it certainly has lots of technical challenges. But I think, James, you take a very interesting approach to it. I think you see it as a very profound, a very delicate piece in some ways. How do you think of the Arpeggione Sonata? Just for those who don't know, the name Arpeggione is attached to an instrument that barely exists anymore, a 5-string bowed instrument, not unlike a cello or a gamba, that it was written for, but it's almost always played on the cello or viola or other instruments that don't do it as well. But at any rate, how do you think about the Arpeggione Sonata?
Well, it's very challenging as the player. Yes, but as mentioned before, I see it as very delicate and everything needs to be taken care of. There's not one note or one beat that doesn't matter in this piece. And also mentioned the technical challenges. With the technical challenges, it's really hard to create that long phrase that I think Schubert intended it to be, and the beautiful simplistic nature in it, yet deep. It has a lot of depth. So there are these you could say, contrasting aspects, but they need to come together to make this beautiful sonata that he composed.
Yeah, and I think you do a remarkable job with the songful, long phrasing that Schubert is really all about. It's all about singing. And I hear that so much in your performance. All of the performances we're hearing today were recorded for the Klein Thursday programs that have been live streamed. And so let's go now to the performance with pianist Charlie Taber and James Baik, Arpeggione Sonata D821 by Schubert, first movement, Allegro moderato. Here we go. So what you have just heard now is the Schubert Arpeggione Sonata first movement, played by James Baik, our 2019 Irving M. Klein International String Competition winner. That was beautiful, James. Did you have a chance to rehearse this at length with the pianist?
We actually probably had 2 rehearsals, 2 or 3 at most.
And where was this recorded?
This is recorded downstairs in my home. We were very lucky to have a small space where it looks nice, looks kind of emulates a concert hall. So I'm very lucky to have that space in my house.
Yeah, and as we move on to Gabrielle's performance of Brahms, is what we're going to hear first. This was recorded. Well, tell us where this was recorded.
It was recorded in Convocation Hall, which is the recital hall that's part of the University of Alberta, where both my parents teach. So I was really lucky to have the space to record there because it's such a beautiful hall. Yeah, so that was like back home in September before I moved to New York.
Right, and your family is, I gather, quite musical.
Yeah, both my parents are professional pianists.
And so how did you wind up on such a small instrument?
Not really sure. They started me on violin when I was 3. And I did piano, like I started learning from them when I was young, and then started taking lessons in piano when I was 5. And then I think around when I was 15, it was just too much to do both. So I chose violin.
Yeah, well, I think you chose well. You are a very, very gifted player. James, when did you start cello?
Not exactly sure, but it was probably when I was 6, 7, or 8, somewhere around there. I know that's.
And how musical is your family?
Well, my whole family enjoys music. My dad's an engineer. My mom was actually a soprano major when she was studying, but she had to put that down to raise kids, raise me and my brother. And my brother um, is a cellist too. He's also in
And
the profession.
and he's older than you, so he probably started cello before you did.
Yeah, he was actually my inspiration to start cello. So
Oh, that's very nice. And he's a doctoral student in cello in Arizona.
yes.
Fantastic. So for each of you, what were your earliest experiences of studying and playing in Houston and in Alberta?
Um,
Yeah, James.
I was when I started with this Korean woman, and she was very nice, and she really nurtured that side where cello was fun. Um, and like as we grow up, playing our instruments can not be fun, but uh, I always look back at that time and I remember how fun it was. So
Yeah.
I try to remind myself of that.
Yeah, that's a great asset. To we get wrapped up in our detail work, and it playing should be hard work and the fun kind of hard work. What about you, Gabrielle? Because you came from a musical family, I suspect that there was a slightly more immersive start.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have memories of my family. Like like me and my sibling were learning piano at home with our parents. So they would help us with that. And then when I was taking lessons, like my parents were always there helping me practice. So it was always, yeah, just like how we spent time together, I guess. And I guess it kind of still is. Like I still get to play with both my parents. So that's something that's continued. And I'm really lucky to have that.
Well, yeah, what a fabulous opportunity that is. And because your parents are pianists, I think that may have made their help for you easier to take. If studying, well, I'll speak from my own experience. I started out as a cellist, and my father was a cellist, Irving Klein, who's the Klein competition is in memory of him. And studying with the same instrument with your father or your own parent, whichever one it is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. But if you're studying violin and your parents are pianists, I think they can give you a wonderful different insight.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because I also did piano, and so when I would get their help from that, I always was it was just harder to take it. But in violin, it was like, yeah, it's a different kind of conversation, I guess, that you're having.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And also because they were available to be your musical partners, that was fantastic as well. James, did your older brother influence you on the cello? You said that he was kind of your inspiration. Was he also a kind of a tutor?
I wouldn't say he really sat down and taught me how to play the cello, but indirectly, just hearing him play, like, he played a lot of concertos when I was young, so I grew up hearing all this cello repertoire that I came to love and I still love. So it was really the cello sound is has been in my ear for since I was young. So it's really nice.
Yeah, I had that. I grew up listening to my father practice all the concertos and the quartet literature and so forth. And you, Gabrielle, heard lots of music all your life, and that is a great gift to those of us who are lucky to have that experience. So let's hear Gabrielle perform. And what we're going to hear is the first Brahms sonata in G with her mother, Patricia Tao. What would you like to tell us about your vision of the Brahms sonata?
um, yeah, this sonata has always been one of my favorites, and I'm so happy I finally got to play it and play it with my mom. I don't know. To me, the opening has always just it's just so beautiful. It's very grounding and warm, and the violin line is so vocal. Yeah, I just feel like it really sings. Yeah, and I just think of like nature and just it's expansive and yeah, it's a great piece.
Yeah, I think the two pieces that the two sonatas that we're featuring here are, of course, both Brahms and Schubert were great songwriters and great melody writers. Maybe the two greatest melody writers of the Romantic era, or maybe of all time. And you certainly hear that in this Brahms sonata. So here is Gabrielle Després and Patricia Tao performing the first movement of Brahms Sonata number 1 in G, Vivace, ma non troppo. Here we go. So you've just heard Gabrielle Després and Patricia Tao playing the first movement of the Brahms First Violin Sonata. Both of our Klein competition winners here have had very, very different experiences of the Irving M. Klein International competition in San Francisco. James won in person with live pianist and a live jury, very lively jury, I might add, and an audience in San Francisco at the San Francisco Conservatory, our normal way of doing things. And this time last year, Gabrielle was preparing for a virtual competition, which meant in this particular case, because it was so early in the pandemic, that there was no chance of connecting with pianists, as you're hearing both of these performers did more recently. What was it like for you, Gabrielle, to be presented with this challenge of playing all of this repertoire and including playing a concerto, an entire concerto, unaccompanied, which is really a fish out of water kind of experience? What was that like for you as you were preparing this time last year?
It was pretty daunting. Not gonna lie, like even like the week leading up to like my recordings, I was like, wasn't sure I could do it. It's just a very different experience, especially with the concerto. It's like when you're playing it, you kind of have to imagine the whole orchestra part as well. So it takes a whole another level of focus and mental energy. Yeah, it was very interesting, and especially listening back to your recordings, it's like, because you can always do another one, so it's always like it could be better. It's a very different mentality than just going in on competition day and just it's over. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So did you do several takes?
Yeah, I did a few takes. Just yeah, I guess you always think you can do better, and it's a good learning experience, I think, because you're really under a microscope and you can see a lot of things you're doing that you might not like and you wouldn't have realized it otherwise. So
Yeah, it was, and I think you have to immerse yourself in what you're not hearing even more so that you get the uplift that you have from hearing the orchestral part. But it's not actually there. That's quite bizarre. James was in San Francisco and got the full live experience. What was that like for you, James?
The Klein competition was such a great experience, I have to say. Out of all the competitions I participated in, the Klein competition was the most welcoming. I felt like everybody who was there, Marcy and all the staff there, were just so supportive, and they really made me feel comfortable. It didn't feel like a competition when I entered the building all the time. And there's such a beautiful hall there that we get to perform in and compete in. So I really enjoyed the competition. But I think I did have the luxury of just accepting what happened after one playthrough. I would find it really hard to compete through recordings.
Yeah, it's a very strange experience. But of course, you've both been doing a good deal of virtual programming and studying and practicing and so forth this year. What's that been like for each of you, Gabrielle? Of course, now you're back at Juilliard and you have in-person lessons and ensemble playing. But before that, what was it like?
Yeah, I mean, this year I think I've gotten really used to recording myself, which I think is really good. But I mean, all of my classes have still been online, like academic. Um, and then, yeah, I guess it was weird, I think, doing Zoom lessons because there's just, you can't really hear anything properly. But I'm just happy that, yeah, since I've been back, we've slowly been doing more and more in-person work. And I think it's just, I don't take it for granted anymore because, yeah, it's just so different. It makes such a difference to play with people and in the same room as people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we will all in a way, benefit from the experience of having been deprived of that and value it for the rest of our lives. James, when are you looking forward to being able to get together live with musicians on a regular basis?
Well, luckily, Colburn just recently they officially stated that they will bring us back for next school year, so this coming fall. So I'm really looking forward to that. I have been stuck at home for since the quarantine started, since Colburn made us go back home. So
And have you been studying with Clive Greensmith via Zoom lessons? How's that worked?
yeah, so me and Mr. Greensmith have been working together through Zoom, and at first it was really challenging. I felt like I wasn't getting um, the level of help that I would at Colburn in person. But as the year went on, I started to adjust, and Mr. Greensmith started to find really innovative ways to help people. So actually, I really need to thank Mr. Greensmith because he made this bearable this time, and it's been actually a productive year for me. I think I've improved, hopefully.
That's terrific. Yeah, if nothing else, we've all been focused on whatever musical pursuits that we've had, almost to the exclusion of everything else, because the rest of our lives are so vacant. We just don't have social lives. We don't have, and I think that immersion, for some people, it's not working. And it's been a lost year. But I think for a lot of people, it has given a little different focus to musical growth. And perhaps that's true for both of you, but it will be nice, James, when you're back in Los Angeles at Colburn School, which is such a wonderful place. And of course, we all know what Juilliard is like, and just an incredibly intense musical experience of the highest order. Let's hear more musical presentations by these two wonderful players. We're going to hear now the Gaspar Casado Suite for Solo Cello, the first movement, the Preludio Fantasia. And both of the pieces that we're going to conclude with are unaccompanied pieces written by great virtuosos on their instruments. Have you had a chance to hear recordings by Gaspar Casado?
I've heard recordings of him playing, but I haven't heard him record his recording for this suite. I'm not sure if he ever recorded it for this.
I'm not aware of it either. I had, when I was growing up, I had lots of recordings of his. He had a vast recording library of the entire literature. He's a wonderful cellist, and you hear that virtuosity in this piece of music, and of course his Spanish origins. So tell us a little bit about this movement.
Yeah, so this is the first movement of his solo suite. There are 3 movements in total, and this first movement is very grandiose at the beginning, and it's very declamatory, and it's really fun. It's been fun personally as the player because very rarely do you get to explore these kind of Spanish elements in a piece. At least
Yeah.
it's been one of the first times for me. So I really enjoyed preparing it, finding different ways, different techniques to produce different sounds that I wouldn't necessarily do in other pieces.
Yeah, it's a really colorful piece, and you get a chance to portray all kinds of different characters in this piece, and we really hear that very, very impressively here. So let's hear the Preludio Fantasia from the Casado Suite for Solo Cello, performed by James Baik. Here we go. That was James Baik performing music of Gaspar Casado. And we're going to conclude our music today with another piece by a great virtuoso on his instrument, Ysaÿe, the composer of these remarkable violin sonatas that kind of parallel the Bach unaccompanied works for violin. Tell us a little bit about the Allemande movement that we're going to hear, Gabrielle.
This movement is very dramatic. I think it opens with this very rhapsodic introduction. I think there's a lot of really strong rhythms throughout, and it's a really fun piece to explore. I think throughout there's just so many interesting harmonies and colors. It's very energetic, but there's moments of very sparse lines.
Ysaÿe was very consciously aware of the Bach solo violin pieces, and one of the things that I particularly notice coming off especially well in your performance of this is something that harkens back to Bach. There are almost always at least two different voices in conversation in this piece, and getting a sound on the G string or the D string that embodies that particular baritone voice, and another voice that might be an alto or a tenor voice or a soprano voice on the upper strings of the violin, and having them play off against each other. It's extraordinary that you can play a duet on one violin, and that's what Ysaÿe has written here. Sometimes there are three voices, I think, and I think you bring that off very well. So let's now hear Gabrielle Després playing the Ysaÿe Sonata number 4, Allemande, lento maestoso movement. Here we go. So we've heard Gabrielle Després playing music of Ysaÿe. We've heard James Baik play Casado, and we've heard Schubert and Brahms today. Thank you both for being with us in this installment of the Peninsula Symphony All-Stars at Home. We're so glad that you are in the Peninsula Symphony's future. We look forward to hearing you on our stage sometime when things get back into a more normal formation. And we wish you well with your careers and your studies the rest of this year. Gabrielle, where will you be for the rest of this year?
I'm in New York for the next month and a half, and then I'll go home. And I think I'll be spending my summer in Quebec at Domaine Forget, if it happens in person, but we'll see.
Right, a lot of unknowns. And James, what's in your immediate future? You'll be back in LA at Colburn in the fall?
Yeah, so I don't have any summer plans for summer festivals, unfortunately. So I'll just be.
James was scheduled to play music at the Vineyards in Napa last year, and there were some hiccups for obvious reasons.
Yes.
We hope that will get renewed at some point. Well, thanks to you both. You're both charming young musicians with extraordinary musical gifts. And it makes me so pleased and proud to be able to hear you play and connect with you as musical colleagues. And we look forward to seeing you very soon. Have a great summer, and we'll expect to hear more wonderful things from you as time goes on. Thanks very much, and thanks to our audience for Peninsula Symphony All-Stars at Home. We'll see you again soon. Bye.
Want more content like this from Peninsula Symphony? Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the red subscribe button below and tap the alarm bell icon to get notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Thanks for watching.